Gather over here. It's being live streamed, so I'm going to be facing this way, so you may want to come over here. Please watch your step, it's very slippery. Check. Shiviti Adonai l'negedi tamid ki mimini balamot לכן שמח לי וגל כבודי הבשרי ישכון לבטח כי לא תעזוב נפשי לשאול לא תיתן חסידך לראות שחת תורינו רחיים שובע שמחות פניך נימות במנך נצח. I've set the eternal always before me. God is at my side. I shall not be moved. Therefore does my heart exult and my soul rejoice. My being is secure. For you, God, will not abandon me to death, nor let your faithful one see destruction. You show me the path of life. Your presence brings fullness of joy. Enduring happiness is your gift. Death has taken our beloved Harold Black, Moshe Aharon ben David Zlata. Our friends grieve in their darkened world. In their silence, there is lamentation. In their tears, there is loneliness. If one is lost in sorrow, may one find the presence of loving friends. Hear them, O God, be with them. For Harold's love that united us in life, and which death cannot sever, for his companionship that we shared along life's path, and which continue through the tenderness of memory, for the gifts of his heart and mind that brought us joy and happiness, and is now a precious remembrance. For all these and more, we give our thanks to God. I'm going to read in Hebrew, and then I will read it in English. Psalm, a very common psalm that we say at this time, Psalm 23. Adonai roi lo achzar, bina deshe yar b'hitzeni, amei menuchos, yan haleini nafshi yashavev, yan cheni b'maglei tzedek, leman shemo, gam ki elech b'gei tamaves, lo yirahara, ki ata imadi, shivtechu umishnatecha, hema yanchamuni, taroch lefanai shulchan, neged sihirorai, dashanta bashem roshi, kosi revaya, ach tov v'chesed, yirfuni kol yamei chayai, v'shavti b'veit Adonai, l'orech Vechi Amim. God is my shepherd, I shall not want. God makes me lie down in green pastures, lead me beside still waters, and restores my soul. You lead me in right paths for the sake of your name. Even when I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for you, God, are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You've set a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You've anointed my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of God forever. Kohelet wrote, "The eye never has its fill of seeing. Young or old, those who depart this life never see enough of the world, never complete their task, never cherish their loved ones enough before they're called home. How they yearn for yet another respite from the final summons, and how we yearn to have them close to us for yet another challenge in our lives, yet another joy, yet another precious moment together. God, be now with those whose hearts are broken, because whenever parting comes, it comes too soon. Console them at this hour. Be near to them when light seems distant. Sustain them, O God, until the time of healing." At this time, I would like to share some words about Harold. Harold Black was traditional. He lived to be over 100 and was very proud of that. He worked hard and loved his family, and in turn was a blessing to his family. He was a loving husband and was married to Annette for 30 and a half years before she passed away. He was married to June for almost 39 years. He was a proud father to Linda, Diana, Deborah, and Maxanne, who passed away when she was just 4 years old. Her loss was a tremendous blow to the family. He had a very special bond to Diana's late husband, Shachar, who sadly passed away 2 years ago. As Harold would say, may his name be a blessing. Harold was a proud Saba to Shaarey, Ron, Saar, Sarit, Nir, Lee, Jordan, Nikki, Rhonda, Michael, Erica, Aubrey, and Alex. A caring role model to his great-grandchildren, Leanne, Arad, Ella, Raz, Dor, Erez, Eden, and Tom. Harold loved June's children as his own. Patty, Michael, David and his wife Jenny, grandchildren Debbie, Elizabeth, Sam, and Max, and great-grandchildren Desmond, Quinn, Jake, Sophie, and Sam. Harold was born February 15th, 1923, and in the early part of his life, lived with his family in Brunkild, Manitoba. Harold was the youngest of 6 children. He had 4 older sisters, Cecilia, Edith, Rosalie, and Marianne, and an older brother, Sam. I've been told that Harold was a rascal growing up. In Brunkild, he lived across from a grain elevator and could often be found high up on that grain elevator's ladder or playing somewhere by the water. He was an unintended daredevil, a trait that was inherited by his grandson Jordan. In Brunkild, Harold's family operated the general store, the heart of the farming community. Harold lost his father David on his 9th birthday, losing his main role model. It was made all the more difficult as between the ages of 6 to 12 years old, Harold was sent alone to Winnipeg to live with his mother, sister, and family in order to attend Cheder in preparation for his bar mitzvah. At age 12, Harold returned to his family in Brunkild. Harold's work ethics and morals were influenced by watching his widowed mother, Lottie, raise and run a business with the help of her children and do everything for her family. His mother encouraged Harold to move to Toronto when he finished high school at the age of 16, and there pursued his university studies in optometry. In the early 1940s, during the war, Harold left his studies to enlist in the Air Force in World War II. Although he was never sent overseas, he did train at CFB Trenton in Ontario. He often recalled the Australian pilots who trained with them and recalled their fearless attitudes. He told his grandson Michael that he developed a sense of who he was during his time in the Air Force. The character-building qualities he learned in the armed forces stayed with him throughout his life. Harold was regimented. He exercised every day and used his time wisely. His time spent in the Air Force matured Harold. In fact, he considered staying in the military instead of returning to his studies. His studies went out, and he returned to university to complete his optometry training. It is important to note school was not easy for him, but he persevered. His practice spanned almost 6 decades. After the war, Harold finished his studies and returned to Winnipeg. He was introduced to Annette Friedman, and in September 1949, they were married and started their family. Harold's career progressed, first with Manny Finkelman, then Manuel Lecker, and then as in-house optometrist at Mitchell Kopp Jewelers. In 1967, he proudly opened his private practice on Donald Street. Annette worked side by side with Harold to grow the business practice, where she was a well-loved and an invaluable asset. He encouraged Debbie to study for her optician's license, and she continued to work as an optician in Harold's practice in the 1980s. Harold eventually moved to the clinic at Osborne Spectacle Center and worked there until he retired in his mid-80s. Linda, Diana, and Deborah remember that as a father, Harold set a very strong example in his work ethic and love for his family. The family never went without. As a young couple, while Harold worked, Annette stayed home and looked after the family, and together provided their daughters with a loving home. Annette and Harold traveled to Israel many times together. They loved Israel and supported J&F projects. When Diana made Aliyah, that was a tremendous source of pride for Annette and Harold. Annette, may her memory be a blessing, sadly passed away after a battle with cancer on February 14th, 1980. Several years later, Harold met June, and they were married on December 31st, 1984. June loved Harold. He was a wonderful man, a good husband, gentle and kind. And Harold loved June. He would say, a great wife. And most importantly, Harold greatly respected June. June, loving and supportive, took care of Harold and did everything he needed. Interestingly, Harold was a bit of a procrastinator at home, but never at the office. It was his way to think things through very carefully. June and Harold spent many holidays together in Palm Springs, walking and even mountain hiking. June and Harold also traveled to Israel several times to visit Diana, Shachar, and their family, and to visit projects that they supported. Harold's grandchildren and great-grandchildren saw him as a hero, and they looked up to him. He taught the values of having a strong work ethic, never giving up, being goal-oriented, relying on facts instead, and not emotions. To his grandchildren, Harold was Superman. Harold was the epic grandfather in Saba. Whenever he spent time with them, it was special. From teaching Nir and Jordan to play poker, to sharing with Aubrey and Alex his love of golf, inspiring Michael and Aubrey with weightlifting, emphasizing the importance of good health and exercise. For Michael, he encouraged him to work hard in completing his university education and to take pride in working hard towards his goals. He loved his granddaughter Rhonda and was proud of her participation with synagogue choir. Shaarey and Saar, like their Saba, are determined athletes. Saar followed in his Saba's footsteps and served as a lieutenant colonel in the Israeli Air Force. Harold was very proud of each grandchild and great-grandchild. Harold loved them all, and they all loved him. My first introduction to Harold was as Dr. Black, the man that my father would make house calls to. It was somewhat of a mystery, because it was very common, after being picked up from some activity, that we had to make a stop at Dr. Black's place. It was a very, very common occurrence. It was an honor when late in his life, Harold and I were able to connect to the Simpkin Center. June would bring Harold to the Shabbat morning services. Harold always seemed pleased to be there. My understanding was that Harold was more spiritual than religious, that attending synagogue was not perhaps something that he would have ordinarily done, but I was really appreciative that he was there. And I hope that both he and June got a kick out of Marie's son leading services. I want to conclude by sharing a recent memory. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau came to visit the Simpkin Center for a Passover service just this past April. At the end of the service, the Prime Minister went to shake hands with each resident in attendance. When he approached Harold was wearing a button that indicated he was 100 years old. The Prime Minister asked him what his secret was. With June's help in relaying the question to Harold so he could hear it, Harold answered, exercise, good food, and clean living. Harold's advice and values were strong to the end. We mourn the loss of Harold. May his memory be a blessing. At this time, I'm now going to read a message from Linda, Diana, and Deborah. It's titled, Our Dad Harold. Today we gather to honor and celebrate the life of our dear dad, Harold. Our dad was able to touch the hearts of everyone he encountered with his kindness and humor. To us, he was kind, even-handed, and a constant support. How can we sum up in just a few sentences his life that spanned 100 years and what he meant to us? Our dad was the true definition of a gentleman. He was always well-mannered, respectful, pleasant and calm, good-humored, and full of social graces. He had an innate ability to put people at ease with his full smile and positive energy. He took a genuine interest in who they were and what they had to say. He loved a good joke and was great at telling them. With his quirky sense of humor, we learned this all too well with the many post-workout Rady breakfasts we were able to share with him in his final decade. Our mom and dad made certain our home was always open and welcoming to their many friends who could drop in unannounced at any time. The Wainers, Levines, Shuckets were a constant throughout our younger years. Our dear neighbors, Sid and Vita Parks, the Coyles, Cooks, Plotkins, and Pollocks, these were lifelong friendships, whose loyalty and generosity to our family are felt until this day. Every Christmas, Ray and Joan Stevens hosted the Blacks for brunch and a visit. Our cheeks ached, we laughed so hard at the humor and jokes shared by Joan. Throughout our lives, in good times and sad, we could always depend upon our dad to give us sound advice, encouragement, and his unspoken love and support. We were so blessed that our children, Rhonda, Michael, Saar, Shaarey, Nir, Jordan, Aubrey, and Alex, all had the chance to share his love and admiration, and that his great-grandchildren will know him through the legacy he left, that we will impart to them with our stories. To them all, he was a legendary grandpa and Saba. We envied our dad's dedication to his physical and mental health. Every day for as long as we can recall, he would hit the gym for 1.5 hours on work days, and golf, bowl, and walk or run for miles. His biceps were legendary and could never fit his short-sleeve shirts. He would command a large gathering of fellow YMHA friends as he would bench press 350 to 400-pound weights. Our basement rec room displayed his many bowling trophies. His favorite was his hole-in-one trophy, achieved at his happy place, Glendale Country Club. His sisters, our aunts, catered to his every need, and they shared their love of food and family at many family holidays and celebrations. Our dad was admired by his many nieces and nephews who've shared their thoughts with us over the past few days. Uncle Harold was a favorite for so many of them. Our dad never stopped. He ran, walked, hiked, bowled, and golfed into his mid-90s, and amazingly continued to pedal the stationary bike at Simpkin Center, sometimes twice a day. He said to us always, "Never stop moving. Never give up the ship. Stay strong. Do the best you can. Keep your nose to the grindstone. Always be respectful." Our dad was a fighter to his last days. He left us the blueprint on how to live a great life. His 100 years was a blessing. His 100 years were his gift to us. We love you, dear Dad, and will treasure your memory. May the memory of Harold Black, Moshe Aaron ben David Vizlata, endure among us as a blessing. In your own time, O God, when we too are called to enter eternity, may we leave this life secure in the faith that in your light we shall see light. In life and in death we cannot go where you are not, and where you are, hope endures. Sustained by this assurance, we invoke your name, Almighty God. At this time, I'll be reciting the prayer, El Malei Rachamim. First in Hebrew, and then I will translate in English. El Malei Rachamim, Shochein Bamramim, Hamsei Menucha, Nechona, Tachat Kanfei Ashlina, Im Kodoshim Nutorim Kazorkia Masirim, Et Nishmat, Moshe Aharon ben David Vizlata, Shelach L'Amo, Be'al Rachamim Yistarehu Beseter Kanafav, L'Elamim, V'yitzar B'yitzar Chaim Et Nishmato, Anayu Nechalato, V'yanuch B'Shalom, Al Mishkavo V'nomar Amen. Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence. To Harold Black, Moshe Aharon ben David Vizlata, who has entered eternity, O God of mercy, let him find refuge in your eternal presence, and let his soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is his inheritance. May he rest in peace, and let us say, Amen. At this time, we're going to say Kaddish. I'm just going to give a moment to make sure that the family has the Kaddish in front of them. I'll be turning aside over here, and I've been requested that you will repeat the Kaddish after me. Yitgadal v'yitkadash Shemei Rabah Be'alma Divra Chirutei Be'amlich Malchutei B'chayechon Uv'yomechon Uv'chayei Dechol Beit Yisrael Be'agala Uvizman Kariv Vimru Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabah Mevorach Le'olam Omei Omaya. Yitbarach V'yishtabach V'yitpoar V'yitromam V'yitnaseh V'yitadar V'yitaleh V'yitalal Shmei Dekudsha Brichu La'ela Min Kol Berchata V'shirata Tushbechata V'nechamata Damiran Be'alma V'imru Amen. Yehi Shloma Rabba Min Shamaya v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Aseh shalom b'mramav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Due to the weather circumstances and how slippery and muddy it is, I would normally, at the end of the service, I would normally have everyone form two lines. I don't think that is either practical or safe today. So I ask all of us here who are not family that we say the traditional words of comfort at this time. Hamakom yinachem etchem betoch sha'ar avelei Tzion v'Yushalayim. May God console you with all who mourn in Zion and Jerusalem. And we ask that we all go forth in peace to life. At this time, I just wish to make at least one housekeeping notice. The meal of consolation, I believe it's on the main floor room at 255 Wellington Crescent. That is immediately following. At this time, we're going to do something that's very difficult, but very important. A very important mitzvah that we're going to do is that we're going to cover Harold's coffin with earth. You will see that there are shovels here. It's a mitzvah for those who are able to come and to provide a final blanket of earth. And that's what we are doing now. I ask that the family come first, and I further ask that everyone be very careful. It is very slippery over here. You will see that you can come from both sides. You will see also, and I ask that you stay further away from the grave than you may normally do in the summer months. And further, you will see that there are 4 shovels. Those of you that wish to participate, please, we're going to shovel earth to, at the very least, cover the casket. And when we're done, put the shovel back in the earth. We don't provide a shovel to another person normally, as we don't want to obligate someone to the mitzvah, so we put it back in the earth. That is our tradition and custom. I ask that the family very carefully come forward at this time. There's also sand in the pail. If you find it easier. Everyone who would like to partake in this mitzvah, please come forward.